Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Thank you for being with us, first of all. Just tell me a little bit about the Pittsburgh angle to what's in here, because there's so much Pittsburgh in this place.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be impossible not to have a great deal of Pittsburgh in it, because when you're talking about the city of Pittsburgh, you're talking about not just two of the greatest black baseball franchises, we're talking about two of the greatest baseball franchises.
And arguably the greatest baseball catcher, which a lot of people leave Josh Gibson out of the equation.
So you start talking about the Pittsburgh Crawfords, the Homestead Grays, we're talking two of the greatest baseball franchises ever. And then you have that common denominator of having Josh played for both of them. Gibson, in my opinion, my own humble opinion, hands down, the greatest catcher ever. When we talk about not only what he was able to do from an offensive standpoint, but also what he was able to do from a defensive standpoint, because sometimes lost in the epic power, that big bat of his, was the fact that he was a great catcher. Now, there may have been a few other catchers who were better defensively
not offensively,
but no one offensively, and so you combine the two. I don't know if there's anyone close to Gibson.
Whenever we're talking about baseball in Pittsburgh, and obviously the Pirates go back 129 years, the Negro Leagues had a long and storied, as you say, history there. The argument always comes up, and I know you get this one a lot. How do you compare statistics? How do you say on either end? Because I've heard it said the other way, that maybe some of the statistics in Major League Baseball at the time should be less valid because they didn't have all the African American players in.
Well, what we know is that had the doors opened sooner, the record books would be different.
Yes.
Because you can base that argument on just what happened after 1947.
Yes.
And one of the most, I think, astonishing pieces in the museum is they say little script piece that basically points out the fact that from 1949 to 1959, 9 of 11 National League MVPs were former Negro League players.
Oh my goodness, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so we're talking about
we
the
just think of
immediacy
Satchel
of the
Paige
impact. And we get an old Satchel Paige. But you think about the fact that these men didn't just learn to play after 1947. So all these great stars that were missed before 1947, they would have changed the game. My contention has always been that the major leagues never got the superstar Negro League. Josh was almost on his deathbed when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Satchel was well beyond his prime, but he's still highly effective when he gets there. But you don't get Cool Papa Bell. You don't get Buck Leonard.
No.
You don't get Hilton Smith, Boo June Wilson, Oscar Charleston. These men would have been superstars in any league. And there are so many others that fall right into that equation that most baseball fans don't know anything about. That's our job here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, to enlighten them. And then hopefully as they learn more about these legendary athletes, they will be included in those conversations along with their major league counterparts when we start talking about the best to ever play this game. Just essentially walked into an old ballpark. The look, the feel, the sound, all reminiscent of being in an old ballpark. The only difference is in this old ballpark, you're going to meet some new baseball heroes. People that we should have known about years ago, many are just discovered. The legendary James Thomas Cool Papa Bell. First and foremost, the greatest nickname in baseball history.
No, human history. Let's be clear here, okay?
Cool Papa, still believed to be the fastest man to ever play this game. Clocked him in an amazing 12 seconds, circling the bases from home to home. And of course, as you well know, his good friend Satchel Paige would say of Cool that it was so fast, he could walk in a room, turn off the lights, get in bed, pull up the covers before the room went dark. That's actually a true story, but I can tell you this, you don't have to fictionalize the speed of Cool Papa Bell. Cool Papa Bell once stole 175 bases in a less than 200 game season. Twice, honest to God's truth, twice scored from first base on a bunt in exhibition games against Major League All-Stars.
Wow.
Indianapolis, Indiana, but he played for both the Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords, the legendary Oscar Charleston. Again, Buck O'Neil said of Charleston, he was the greatest all-around baseball player he had ever seen.
Ever.
Ever seen. And here's a guy who saw some of the greatest in the Negro Leagues. He signed Ernie Banks. He signed Lou Brock. You know, he was there with Mays, and he says without question, Oscar Charleston was the greatest all-around baseball player he had ever seen. That is high praise.
You've said he played with a bit of a mean streak?
Oh, yeah, no. He had a little nastiness to him on the field. But when he became a manager, he was a very nurturing manager for a guy who was as tenacious as Charleston was. Buck would tell a story of them playing in Mexico, and Charleston scores from second base on a single on a close play at the plate. He says Charleston barreled over the Mexican catcher, says face mask went one way, chest protector went another way, shin guards go another way, and it incites a fight. And so Buck says they're coming up to Charleston, and Charleston knocking them down one after another. At that time, the security at those games was the military, the Army. And so they were about to arrest Charleston when the general of the Army stepped in and said, no, leave him alone. Any man that strong, leave him alone. The legendary William Judy Johnson here at shortstop. Judy Johnson was, as Buck would say, a baseball player's baseball player. You know what I mean? Everywhere he went, they won. He was very heady, very smart. He actually played more third base than he did shortstop. But at third base, we had to have Ray Davis at third base. But Judy Johnson, one of the great winners this sport has ever seen. Hall of Famer. So he was there with that Pittsburgh Crawford team in 1935 that many believe to be the greatest baseball team ever assembled.
Ever. And when you say that, you're not talking about Negro Leagues.
No. We're talking about baseball history.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the city of Pittsburgh had two of the greatest baseball teams ever assembled. 1931 Homestead Grays, 1935 Pittsburgh Crawfords. It is debatable about which of those two teams were better. Absolutely. Walter Buck Leonard. Yeah, Leonard was incredible. He was compared to Lou Gehrig, but believed to have even greater defensive abilities than Gehrig. And the old timers in the Negro League say, the greatest fastball hitter this sport has ever seen. They say sneaking a fastball past Buck Leonard was like trying to sneak sunrise past a rooster. You couldn't do it. He sit dead red and would not miss. Leonard was incredible. A great gentleman of the game. Everybody admired and loved Buck Leonard. You know, you never heard anyone say a disparaging word about Buck Leonard, and he could flat out play. Last but certainly not least, as it relates to Pittsburgh black baseball, in my estimation,
Pittsburgh baseball,
the greatest catcher to ever play this game. And there were a lot of great catchers in the Negro League. Raleigh Biz Mackey, Roy Campanella got his start there in the Negro Leagues. But when you combine both offense and defense, it has to be Josh Gibson. Yeah, from Buena Vista, Georgia. Moved to the Steel City at a very young age. And, you know, when we talk about lore and legend around any athletes, it has to be Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell. Well, Josh had that same kind of legend and lore surrounding him, but when you go back and look, and much of his career when he was playing in Latin America is well documented. Everywhere Gibson played, he hit. And everywhere Gibson played, they won. There ain't no small coincidence. And as Buck would say, he wasn't a good catcher. He was a great catcher.
Defensively.
Oh, absolutely. He was throwing guys out from the crotch back in that era. Buck said had complete control of his pitching staff and was a good running catcher. Gibson was going to steal your bases to go with that big bat of his. You know, so he had the complete game. I know it's so easy to get lost when we start talking usually about the greatest players to play this game. Most of the time we focus on center field because that's the glamorous position. You can make a legitimate argument that Josh Gibson was the greatest baseball player to ever play this game. What he did as a catcher, because as you well know, that combination of power and average from the catcher's position, it just doesn't happen. No, the position is just too physically demanding. It beats your body up. He caught his entire career in the Negro Leagues. And again, he wasn't a good catcher. He was a great catcher.